so much for watching The Last Page, the show where we read books by local authors and then have them on for the book club discussion. I'm Aran Spitzer. I'm joined by News 8 producer Sarah Skibisky, and of course, the author of the book we read this month, The Wilde Trials by Mackenzie Reed. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, for those who don't know, what is The Wilde Trials about?
Yes, so I've been calling it kind of like a dark academia Hunger Games because it's about a girl who goes to an elite boarding academy where instead of picking a valedictorian, they make them compete in a physical competition known as the Wilde Trials. And not only do you get the title of valedictorian, but you also get the giant prize pot of money that comes with it. So our leading main character, Chloe, she really wants to win, not just because she's very competitive, but also because her sister is sick and her family really needs the money. But as she's competing in the Wilde Trials, someone starts blackmailing and sabotaging her, and she strikes a deal with her brooding ex-boyfriend who followed her into the trials to try and figure out who, even though she kind of thinks it might be him.
It's so funny that you said the Hunger Games, because when I was reading it, I was like, this is like my child, like my teenager, the Twilight series and the Hunger Games meshed together, and you kind of get this perfect world of competitors. But how did you decide? I guess the hardest part with something like this is what information to reveal and when. So what was that like in your head?
It's so funny. I love writing mysteries and thrillers, and I hate writing the mystery part. But basically, I kind of always know the ending. Like, I know who is behind things, and it's more just like, how do we get there? So I really wanted to use the setting to the book's advantage. And the setting is very, like, kind of creepy. They're at an abandoned estate deep in the woods because kind of the purpose of the competition is the school wants to take them out of this, like, they go to like a very modern tech school, and it's kind of like almost a survival of the fittest situation where, like, when you take all of that away, can you still compete with like the highest level of students? So I kind of built the mystery around this estate in the woods and the grounds, and then the trials too, which are built on the values of the school.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're so fine. I was wondering why school sanctioned, right? It could have been like an underground competition, but it seems like a lot of that was surrounding. So why did you want that school sanctioned competition?
I went to a private school, and I really wanted to kind of play with the idea of like an elite boarding academy. And I think like a boarding academy is, I just kept thinking of, you know, what if a school was so cutthroat where you had to physically compete for valedictorian? Like, everybody is so smart that it comes down to like an actual competition. And that was kind of the basis for the whole story. And then I thought it would be really fun where you have a lot of kids who are like pretty privileged and also very competitive, and kind of playing with the Lord of the Flies aspect of it, which is, who do people turn into when like normal society isn't there to kind of hold them accountable? And that's what we kind of see throughout the book, is these students giving into this idea that like, oh, nobody's really watching them and they all want to win. How far will they go to win?
Yeah. Were there any scenes that you felt like when thinking about it, this is going to be in the book, or did it just like kind of flow, or what was that writing process?
Totally. So actually the beginning scene when Chloe is like very excited for the last day of school, and she goes out into the foyer, and the list of students participating in the Wilde Trials is on the bulletin board. That scene was always like the beginning of the book because it reminded me so much of when you're in a musical and you're like,
I was gonna just say that. It's like the day that the cast list comes out.
And if anyone's been in a musical, I have. The emotions on days like that are so high. Everybody's around, even if they're not in the musical, right? They like just want to be there for the drama. So that scene I just had always pictured being like a really pivotal opener, because not only is she hoping to see her name on the list, But then when she see Hayes's name, who's her ex-boyfriend, who she never thought would enter the competition because that was the whole reason they broke up. And, you know, it's like this really big moment for her where she's like, what is he doing here? He's trying to get back at me. I hate him.
How did you come up with these trials? That seems to be the hard, like, as I was listening to how they were solving things and, you know, kind of reading through just these puzzles essentially, I was like, how did she come up with this?
I knew, so it really helped once I zeroed in on that the trials should reflect the values of the school. So like, and I knew I wanted ambition to be the most valued trait that kids have. So I knew I wanted that to be the last trial. And then the other thing with the trials is they start off pretty like innocent, you know, they're just kind of on like scavenger hunts and brain teasers, and then they really do start getting like very intense, which you find out why, of course. But I had a lot more fun with the intense ones. Honestly, the beginning ones are the hard ones because it's like you want to keep the reader's attention and also build suspense, but of course you don't want to start it too dangerous right off the bat.
When people are reading the book, what conversations are you hoping that they have?
Ooh, I love this question. When I wrote the book, it's very much a sibling book because Chloe is entering this competition because her little sister Cece is sick and she really hopes to win so she can get that money just to help support her family with all the bills. And I feel like that Chloe is very eldest daughter coded, where it's like, as an 18-year-old girl, that like really should not be your responsibility. Yeah. But of course, she feels very responsible for it. And then you have Hayes, who is the younger brother, and he's very much still grieving his older brother who passed away in the games, Hunter. And I really just want like readers to kind of see the characters for what they are and also maybe have conversations around this idea of like elite academia and the pressure that comes with it and the, you know, cutthroatness of it, and if it's all really worth it in the end. Yeah,
so I mean, the book engages with some themes, right? We have questions of guilt, innocence, morality, or moral responsibility rather. How much do you think about those things while you're writing versus storyline?
Quite a bit, I would say. It's almost less like I am constantly thinking about them and more like they're just these like little clouds like in the back of my mind. And I think they're also what make the characters who they are. Like knowing that Chloe's guilty makes her, I think, a little more likable instead of her being just this hard, like hearted girl who's like, I'm gonna do whatever it takes. And knowing that Hayes is grieving, I think makes him a little more redeemable because of course when we have like, something I really had to like carefully toe the line with him is we have this brooding ex-boyfriend, but you don't want him to be too mean because like, you know, we want him to have an arc where he is redeemed. And so, yeah, just it's always in my head of like, how do the overarching themes impact the character's arc throughout the book?
Yeah, the whole time my brain was like, get over this guy.
Yeah. I know, my advice would be dump him, but no, no, I'm kidding. I love Hayes. He's one of my favorite characters.
Speaking of themes, do you feel like there's one that readers sometimes miss when reading the Wilde Trials?
Yeah, I think sometimes the like Lord of the Flies Hunger Games-ness of it, because it has like a dark academia feel, the like descent into madness, and again the idea of like, who are you when no one's looking, I feel like that's a little bit more tucked in.
And then I feel like there's a power play in there, right?
Yeah.
Power plays a major role in kind of how these characters work, and then who has more power over the other seems to be a major point of contention among them. It's like, no, I'm powerful here. So how did you, I guess, straddle that line?
Yeah, and honestly, I think part of a theme here is class, because Chloe is very much in like a different, she's a scholarship student, and that's a point of contention between her and the other students, because they think she doesn't deserve to be there, they think she doesn't deserve to win. So towing that line is definitely something I do with care, because you don't want to ever, you know, make anyone too harsh right off the bat and too unbelievable. We call it like the suspension of disbelief. But also, when we think about the real world, like, people do get discriminated against for their class and all sorts of things. So it unfortunately is a reality.
When everything was unfolding, how did you know when you wanted to finish the story? How did you know when the end was the end?
I always know the ending. Sometimes I don't know the middle. Like, I know what needs to happen in the middle, but I don't always know the logistics of the middle. But I knew who the antagonist was, and something that kind of helped with a book like this is we have 7 trials, and the competition is supposed to take place over 2 weeks. And I love using, we call it like a ticking clock plot, where you're constantly counting down to this big event, which in this book, it's the end of the trials, or graduation even. So for me, I was like, all right, I know it has to end at graduation, and then you almost work backwards from there with like the final trial, and then the one before that, and then that was kind of just how I spatially knew where to put things.
Well, that being said, did that ending evolve as you were working out that middle part?
A little bit, yeah. Actually, I'd say the whole like graduation scene, it was almost like a little more intense in like the first drafts. I think it was a little more like of almost like a second like finale, I'd say. And then we kind of toned it down, and I really like the current ending, where I think it ends on a little bit more of like a hopeful, peaceful note. So yeah, the endings for me definitely stay the same in structure usually between drafts, but usually I like go like really hard in the first draft, and then I kind of pull back and find like how I really want the characters to end.
Spoiler alert, but I follow you on Instagram, and
Yes.
I've seen your overword count for
Yes.
this
Yep.
project.
Yeah.
We'll definitely talk about that
Sure
project,
thing.
but have readers responded to the Wilde trials kind of in ways that surprised you?
There's been, I don't want to say so many, but quite a few readers who love Wolf. And they're like, he's the best character in this book.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
can you write a book about Wolf? And I'm just like, I probably won't, but I would never say never. So
You know
that's
what?
been fun.
I actually get that.
Yeah.
He's just such a good, loyal friend at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like, he cares so much about Hayes that you can't fault him for that almost. You
Yeah.
have to forgive him.
Yeah, and I loved writing, like when I wrote him, I really wanted to write boy best friends. Like, I love boy best friends, and I think it's something we don't often see. Like, we see girl groups and all of that in books, but I wanted to show that loyalty between characters. But it's funny because, of course, in the beginning, everybody hates Wolf,
Right.
and then he also becomes redeemable.
Yeah. So you mentioned the Hunger Games, obviously. Could you see this book maybe like hitting a big screen one day?
Oh, I would love it. I see it. So when I write, everything is a movie. Like, I'm very visual. Sometimes I feel literally crazy because I will just like pace around my house, like envisioning the scenes or like blocking them out loud, basically just talking to myself. So everything is very like vivid in my mind. And then when I write it, it's always with the hope that like, hey, if anyone ever wants to bring it to the big screen, I'm here.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
I am here. I'm here to see that.
Yeah, amazing.
Do you think that you'll write like a story about Wolf maybe? Do you think that you'll keep living in this world in the future?
I would never say never, honestly. This book actually, even though it is entirely a standalone, it takes place in the same universe as my first book, The Rosewood Hunt. So there were like a few little Easter eggs to that book in this one. And I would love to just keep going in this universe, like expanding with different characters. I would actually love someday to write a book featuring Chloe's younger sister, Cece. I think she could kind of be this like new era, which would be fun, and it would be like her book very much instead of like a sequel. But yeah, I always just think about that. Like my stories never die when I hit the end.
Okay, so it's not really the end. It's a possibility for more. Now, I want to know a little bit about you. How did you become an author? How did you get into this line of work?
Yeah, I've always loved stories. Like I think about when I was in a car seat, my mom tells me, I don't really remember, but she was like, you would just be back there babbling and singing and like making things up as you go. And I feel like that really followed me throughout like my whole life. Like growing up, I always had stories in my head. I'd be writing them in notebooks. And then when I was around 10, I started writing songs because I played guitar and I thought I was going to be a songwriter. Like I was like, I'm gonna be Taylor Swift.
Oh, that with the musical theater combined?
Yeah, right. And so when in high school, I was still writing stories and I had been working on a book in the background, but the songwriting was really what I thought I was going to do like professionally. And it's funny because as hard and confusing as publishing is to get into, I would say songwriting is even harder because I was like, I have all these songs, but I don't know what to do with them. And then I ended up, Nazareth College has a music business program. So I wanted to go there for that program. And then after the first semester, it just like was not working out. Like I didn't like totally get into the program and I just kept having all these doors closed in my face. And I was like, I don't think I'm actually meant to do this. And when I like finally accepted that, I shifted gears. I switched to a communication and media major, which I loved. And then I started taking writing so seriously. And like that book I had been writing for like years just in my free time, all of a sudden it turned into a trilogy. And after that, my parents were like, okay, like, what are you gonna do with it? And I was like, I didn't think this far ahead. But after that, I started looking into traditional publishing, and you have to have a literary agent usually. So then I went backwards to that, and I started learning about how to get a literary agent, which is through a process known as querying. And it ended up taking me 4 books before I got an agent. And then it took another 2 books before I wrote The Rosewood Hunt, which ended up selling to HarperCollins, which also published the Wilde trials. So yeah, The Rosewood Hunt was my 6th book. So it took me a little bit, but that's how I made it here.
Well, that seems like that's definitely not linear, which I think is what a lot of people see ultimately, you know, with success. When you hear those stories, they're not straight lines for sure, but then other people, maybe young writers who are in the same boat that you were in, don't necessarily know what they want to do, but they do write. What's your advice to them?
I always say you have to be a little bit delusional. And what I mean by that, like in a good way, and what I mean by that is this is an industry that can be, it's just, there's so much rejection. Like at every stage, you write the book and then you try and find an agent, and sometimes you can't find an agent and you have to shelve the book and do another book. And I think the delusion kind of steps in just with believing in yourself so much that you have to keep writing books. Like, you know, it sounds like common sense, but like the only way you'll never get published is if you stop trying. And I think I just tell people, like, you know, every book you write, you get stronger. Every rejection you get closer to a yes, because at least you're still moving in the right direction and trying. And I really think that's like all you can do. And eventually, maybe it'll be book 6, hopefully sooner for everybody else, but you know, eventually you'll crack the code.
You talked a little bit about your style of writing, that you kind of go to that end first, you have that in your mind, and then you work around that. What else, what's your process?
I always start, so ideas cook in my brain for like a pretty long time before I actually start writing them. But what I do, anytime I do have an idea, I create like a 1-sentence pitch for it, just to like write down in my phone. And then from there, I love plotting my books using, it's called the Save the Cat method. Okay. And Save the Cat Writes a Novel is an amazing craft novel. If I'm not a huge craft book reader, but if anybody does want to write fiction, I really recommend that specific book, because what it does is it breaks down the entirety of book into 3 acts, and then within those acts are plot beats. And those are just kind of the beats you want to kind of aim for when writing a novel to keep yourself on track. And once you learn those beats, you see it everywhere. Like, I can't watch a movie without being like, oh, we're in the dark night of the soul. Like, oh, that's the midpoint. Like, pause it. Let me just, yep, that's the midpoint. It's so annoying, honestly. But no, and it's really cool. So I actually use a 4-act structure just because it makes it even, and my brain likes that. But that's how I usually start.
Back to the theater.
Yeah, right, there you go. And that's how I start. And I fill out like an outline in Google Docs. I use Google Docs for pretty much everything. And a lot of times I'll do like a synopsis as well, which is kind of like a summary of the whole book. And then it's funny because I do all that work, and then when I'm drafting, I rarely refer to it.
Okay.
But it's like in my brain. I don't know. And sometimes it goes off the rails a little bit, but still, that like preliminary work is very helpful.
That seems so, I guess, there's a lot of logistics involved, and thank you for kind of clarifying that, because I think for a lot of, especially young writers, they're like, it's all about the creativity and the storyline that's living in my brain. How important are those logistical aspects to putting a book together?
Yeah, totally. And for what it's worth, I mean, there are plenty of people who don't plot their books, and we call them pantsers.
Okay.
And they exist, they publish books, so it's definitely just person to person. I just find that plotting is really helpful because it really helps me push through when I get writer's block, and I absolutely get writer's block. And just knowing like what's to come and having this like loose outline of where I need to go helps me be like, all right, you just need to like get through this one section and then you'll pick up speed again. So it helps me, but might not be for everybody.
How have you gotten through writer's block? Because I've seen like on your Instagram, like you post how many words you write in a day, and sometimes like it just doesn't come. How do you get through that?
It looks different now, I'd say, than it used to. I love taking myself out to a little cafe and like living my little author life. And I feel like it took me a while to like give myself permission to do that, because it was almost like don't do it until, it was like something I had to earn. You know, you can go to a cafe when you get this many words. And now I flipped it, and now it's like, you need to write this much today. You're gonna go to a cafe or the library, or just out of the house really helps me personally. And it's almost like creating an event around it, and especially being in public where I can't be on my phone, because that is really what, like, I'll have writer's block and then I'll go on my phone and scroll a bunch, and then I just spend 2 hours on my phone. So being somewhere where I like can't do that really helps me to just force myself to write. And I will say it helps now that I'm on deadlines set by my publisher. I have like the fear of God in me, even though my team's very nice, but I'm like, all right, I need to finish this book, because if I don't, it gets pushed out and then like everything gets messed up. So I prefer not to be the reason that happens.
Let's talk about the editing process. So are you like married to your words and it's really hard for you to delete them, or are you going with the flow on what your editor has to say?
Not at all. This book specifically is actually one of the books that I wrote it so fast because it had such a tight deadline. I wrote it in like 36 days. It was a fever dream. I thought for sure I was gonna have to rewrite the whole book. And this one, of all of mine, had like the least amount of edits. But I actually just wrote what will be my next young adult thriller. And I ended up having to rewrite it because of my editors really liked it, but they had like some suggestions when it came to the structure. And honestly, sometimes like it can be hard to like hear that, but I really trust my editors. Like I trust their vision. And a lot of times once it sits with me, like at first I can be like, oh, like I don't know if I want to change it, like to that degree especially. But once it sits with me for a little bit, my brain is pretty good at like pivoting and adapting. And I start thinking things through and thinking of new avenues and like what comes next. And usually I can let things go pretty easily, to the point where sometimes I'm too agreeable. My agent, so your literary agent is kind of your like middleman between you and your publisher, and my agent is on all the correspondence between me and my editors. And sometimes she'll be like, Mackenzie, like, you don't have to change it, like it is still your book. And I'm like, no, I know, I'm like a people pleaser. So it is kind of a balance, trying to keep something true to me, but also, you know, it's collaborative and you want them to be proud of the book because they're working on it too. So it's just about towing that line.
Well, you teased it and you do a lot on social media. So what's your next project?
So my next young adult thriller is Worse Than the Others, and it's about a girl who gets invited to a party at an abandoned hotel. But when she gets there, she ends up getting trapped with 5 other teens who are all murder suspects. And if she doesn't figure out which one of them is the actual murderer by dawn, they all die. So it's a little bit of like Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None, meets like A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, I'd say. So
that's a tease if I ever heard one.
I want to read it.
We probably will. Some rapid fire questions from you before we let you go. 1, what trial would most scare you?
Definitely the Fortitude one, where they had to be out in the woods overnight.
Okay, what genre do you like the most to read?
Anything with romance, but like romantic thrillers, I'd say.
How about what genre you prefer writing?
Like horror romantasy / paranormal romance.
What book do you wish you'd written?
Holly Black's Folk of the Air trilogy.
What is your favorite quote?
From that trilogy, if I can't be better than them, I will become so much worse.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Sweet or savory?
Sweet, for sure.
All of the right answers.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mackenzie, for joining us today. If you haven't read The Wilde Trials, please do. It is a wonderful book. We will be announcing our next News 8 Book Club book tomorrow at noon, so stay tuned on News 8 social media, X, Facebook, and Instagram.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.